We all set, Susie?
Um, Good morning, everybody. I don't think everybody's in the room yet. There's only 20 of us. And I know that we had more sign up. So we're just going to wait a few minutes. So we're halfway through the week. That's exciting. I'm just holding on till Friday. Okay. So it's 9 o'clock, David. And it looks
Okay,
like most everybody's in the room. So let's go ahead.
let's do it. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. My name is David Childers. I'm the Director of Title V programs here at Fresno City College. And it's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. I want to thank all of you for hanging in there. It's the final day, the final stretch, and hopefully it's a great day capped off today. I know with some valuable time with your support guides that are going to be very helpful for you. I wanted to kind of speak a little bit this morning to get you started on Title V and what that means. And first of all, we always want to separate. We are the federal Title V in my office. That's the Roman numeral. It's not the state Title V that you hear so much about. We are a federal program for Hispanic serving institutions. So Fresno City College, by virtue of having more than 25% of its enrollment being Latinx, qualifies as a designation as a Hispanic serving institution. That puts us with over, I think now, over 550 HSIs throughout the United States and Puerto Rico. And so through that, we get access to certain types of funding, including a grant project that I'm running at Fresno City right now, which is called Redefining Student Ready. So what we like to do in terms of speaking on equity is just to remind everybody that why is equity important in our office? Because our office wouldn't exist without equity, right? We only receive these funds, we're only eligible to apply for these funds because we serve such a large percentage of Latinx students. And so it's very important for us to keep that in mind. A lot of times we kind of get lost in the fact that one funding source to another and they start to look alike, but this one's special and unique because our eligibility is built completely on our enrollment of Latinx students. So some things that hopefully you'll get to take part in with Redefining Student Ready in this coming year. We're really excited probably before everybody's able to return to campus. We're going to open up a new professional learning center. This is part of the grant, and this is the first time in Fresno City history that we know of that there will be a large dedicated space just for professional learning for faculty, for classified professionals, for administration. This is a big investment in you, and it's a big investment in turn for our students because we know that your success is their success. And we're so excited to have all of you and all the other new faculty and staff on board to be a part of this launch. Hopefully in January if we get to return. And then from there, we've got a lot of professional development. We work closely with Susie, who's done a great job of doing all the administration for the last 3 days on trying to bring high quality programming So we're always looking for feedback. If you've had trainings in the past, maybe at another institution, or there are topics that you're particularly interested in, please pass those along to Susie or pass those along to me directly. And we would love to add those to the offerings that we're already working on in terms of professional development, professional learning. We also have other projects in the grant. We're working on plans for a student engagement center. We are working on plans for a mobile application, hopefully, and this is a 5-year grant, so some of these things will be coming further down the road. But there are a lot of exciting things happening on campus, but mostly we want to root that in the fact that we first serve our Latinx student community. But luckily for us, we're way above that 25% threshold. So any programs and investments that we make in our Latinx students will serve that purpose of raising everyone, because it's already a large population for our campus. And generally speaking, strategies that are good for students help lots of students. And no strategy is more important than the folks who are delivering that on the front line. So thank you very much for having me here this morning. It's been a pleasure to work with this awesome team planning the last 3 days. I hope you guys have gotten a lot out of it. And I hope that today is the perfect ending for that. And if you ever need anything, I want to echo some of my colleagues from yesterday. We're all here for you, and we're all invested in your success. So if you want to know about more about Title V or Hispanic serving institutions or redefining student ready or anything you're just lost about on campus, I'm only an email away. So please feel free to reach out, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the agenda for today. So we're going to start off with the first hour talking about equity guided pathways and the vision for success. And then I will be leading that session. And then Ray is going to talk about starting the semester off with equity and culturally affirming practices. And then we're going to have Susie talk about equity and professional development. Then we're going to have a coffee break. And after that, you're going to have your cohort breakout with your teams. They have some things that they're going to talk to you about in terms of, some starting your semester off and have lingering questions. That'll be a great time to answer those questions. And then Ray's going to finish us off with a call to action. So hopefully everybody's refreshed for the morning and ready to go. And I know this is, as everybody's been saying, this is a lot of information and nobody is expecting you to have memorized all this. So hopefully, you will take some gems away from you, maybe find some areas that you're interested in, and hopefully you're gaining that equity foundation to start off the semester, which is really this academy that we're doing. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about guided pathways. So guided pathways is a very broad term that it's a way of redesigning colleges. So this is a nationwide movement that's been my PowerPoint is running away from me. This is a nationwide movement that's probably been, Ray and Michael, nod your heads or shake your heads, about 10 years that Guided Pathways nationwide has been in existence. And then in California, about the last 5 years, where we've really been working toward, there were some early programs, really was in one of the early cohorts. But as of 2.5 years ago, every single community college in California is a part of the Guided Pathways work plan. We all have a work plan that we're working towards. And it includes these key elements, but it's really about redesigning how we do everything and shifting from an institutional perspective to a student-centered perspective. So every leader in this group has been involved with Guided Pathways in some way, and equity. So equity, Ray and I talk about this in very different ways. Closing equity gaps is our goal, regionally and at the college. So that's the goal. And Guided Pathways is the how. This is the tools that we use to get there. And equity-mindedness is key in that. So a lot of our professional development with Guided Pathways is really tied to changing the culture, really shifting the mindset at the college. So you're coming in at a great time right now. You're in the middle of that project. So you can help us along the way. And you were all hired because the president and your hiring committee saw that you were open to this way of thinking and this culture shift that we're going through. So our most recent project, there's 4 pillars of Guided Pathways that I'll go over in a second, but one of the pillars of Guided Pathways is clarify the path. So I'm starting here because this is the project we've worked on most recently. So I'm pretty excited about. This is for students. So this is redesigning our website and redesigning our onboarding to help students clarify what their major is and get them into a pathway. So every college has created these pathways. They're called meta majors is the broad term. And then every college has a different name for them. We're calling them RAM pathways. So we spent the last 2 years developing our RAM pathways, our meta majors. And then finally, we were working on marketing over since December, we've been working on marketing. And then over the summer, we really did a lot of heavy lifting. We actually have some videos to show students. So I'm going to show you the video that they're playing for RAM Ready. Actually, this week, the students are seeing this video in terms of what the RAM pathways are. And so this is just be about 2 minutes. I'm going to play this video. I need to make sure I'm hearing my sound.
Choosing a career can be one of the most important decisions you'll make in your life, but many students entering college just don't know what they want to study yet. The majority of students change their program of study 1 to 4 times while at Fresno City College. This can cost you a lot of extra money and time. To help students find a career and program of study faster, Fresno City College created RAM Pathways. What is a pathway? A pathway is a group of related programs. The programs in each pathway often teach similar skills, can lead to related careers, and may even share some core classes. This makes it easier for you if you end up switching programs within a pathway. There are 5 RAM pathways at Fresno City College: Arts, Communication, and Language, Business, Culture, Education, and Society, Health and STEM, and Tech and Trades. Besides helping you find a program of study faster and narrowing down your career focus, pathways also offer other benefits. Each pathway has a dedicated student success team that helps you navigate the college experience. Your success team is with you from registration to graduation and can help you access college resources and more. This allows for a more personal and unique college experience. You will have dedicated counselors in your pathway who will help you reach your career and educational goals faster. And finally, since students in each area tend to share similar skills and interests, you'll be able to make some great connections with fellow students and feel supported by those around you. To learn more, explore the RAM pathways and all the related programs at fresnocitycollege.edu/pathways. Choosing a career can be one of the most important.
No, we don't want to listen to it again. Trying to figure out how to get my screen bigger again.
Carrie, exit, escape, and then launch it again.
Thank you, Susie. She's my savior. Okay, so these are our pathways, and not to be confused with our divisions, although there is some similar alignment. So we still have our 8 divisions. So some of you, I know a lot of you are in the humanities division, which most of those programs are in the arts, communication, and language pathway. So you're going to be hearing a lot more about this tomorrow at your division meetings, probably at your department meetings. Some of you are going to have people in your area that know a lot more about what's happening, and some will have some confusion. So I would say embrace the momentary chaos, as we're rolling this out. So we are actually rolling it out this fall. So y'all got a sneak preview at the video, which some of you will see it again in your division meetings tomorrow. So when we talk about the curricular pathways, that's what we've designed, and now we're aligning those services. So that's a part of the larger guided pathways. What we mean by that, where we have the wraparound services. So from onboarding to graduation, that students have all those supports that they need, that we're integrating. And this is administration, it's admissions and records, student services, the library and learning services, all of the services that we offer, we're trying to integrate them to help each student complete their journey and their goals. So this is from the State Chancellor's Office. And as I mentioned, Ray and I have come up with a couple of taglines over the years. One of them, when we did this slide, was closing equity gaps is the destination, guided pathways is the vehicle. I also think of equity-mindedness, achieving equity-mindedness, that culture shift. So it is a part of that journey that needs to sustain throughout. But that is our goal, to close equity gaps both on our campus and in our region, and to raise the living wage for the people that live in our region and in the Valley. So the vision for success, these are the goals by the State Chancellor's Office that were set for every single community college. And we all worked over the last year and a half, I think, we worked to align our different efforts on campus to the vision for success goals. So it says increase certificates and degrees, but I want to clarify, increase the number of students who get them. We don't want to increase the number that we have at the college. And someday you'll hear about why that's a passion for me, I'm sure. We also want to increase our transfers. So students who transfer to CSUs and UCs, we need to increase that number. We want to decrease the units to completion. I just did a presentation yesterday afternoon. As of 2018, I believe, the average student completer at Fresno City College took 102 units. That's average. Students only need 60 units to transfer for a degree. So that's a lot. And I'm all for exploration. But if you're talking about an average of 102, that's not students exploring, right? That's they're confused, or they're taking too many units, or they thought they were in the right career and they're not. So guided pathways is one of the tools, the methods to help reduce those number of units. And what I said yesterday, I'm going to say it again today. If there's a student that comes in and they want to take 102 units, please let them take 102 units. But that's not the goal for most of our students, right? So we want to help them clarify their path and make sure they're entering the right major in the right area. And if they change their mind, they can change their mind. And I'm going to show you a slide in a second that will clarify that a little bit. So we want to increase employment in a field of study and close equity gaps. Ray's going to talk more about that later, so I'm not going to say too much right now about that. And then close regional achievement gaps, or as Ibram Kendi, who you'll see tomorrow, likes to say, opportunity gaps, increase the regional opportunity gaps. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. Guided pathways is the methodology. So we have the 4 pillars of guided pathways. Not going to go into, there's 14 key elements of how to get there. So we have all these measures that we've been doing over the last few years, and we've been working at different pieces. I just showed you one of the pieces that we've been working on. And then there's the tools, and the tools have to do with the legislation that supports these things. So initially, a lot of us were pretty skeptical because all of this legislation was coming down and we didn't really understand the why, right? So of course, the why is our students in our community. This is why we're all here. That's who we're serving, right? So that's our purpose. And these tools are intended to, and they've evolved. You know, there's been some missteps, and those of you who have been involved with AB 705 know, you know, there's a lot of skepticism around a lot of this legislation that's come on, up in the last several years. But all of that really is for the purpose of helping our students and our communities in the state of California. So I personally was skeptical a lot of these movements a couple years ago, and now it's biggest. Anybody in the room will tell you I'm the biggest cheerleader for what we're doing on this campus in terms of guided pathways. Okay, so here's the 4 pillars. Create clear curricular pathways. So that's what I just showed you, or that we were talking about. Help students choose and enter a pathway. So that also helps with that, with the videos that we're doing and the onboarding projects. Help students stay on their path. So this has a lot to do with using early alert, those tools that we talked about yesterday, where if students are struggling, how do we help them? Using library and learning services. So really helping students complete their goals and then ensure that learning is happening. Of course, we want students to be engaged in learning, right? So helping students stay on the path, and I mentioned the 102 units, and I also mentioned exploration and changing your mind. So there's a map analogy that I like to use. So when I drive, I use Waze, but Waze didn't have really nice visuals for what I wanted to show you today. So this is Google Maps. So all my pictures are popping up in my Facebook memories. We 3 years ago, my family drove across the country. We went to visit my brother in upstate New York. And Waze is this amazing app where you can put in your destination, and it showed me, okay, if I fly, so here I can see if I fly, that's the fastest way to go, right? And then there's different routes. I can see this is the fastest way. So if you think of the destination as their career goal or their goal at Fresno City College in terms of a transfer degree, then clarifying the path is showing them the fastest way to get there, right? And there's stops along the way. So I also use an app called iExit. So if I go this route, I know, and I think about the stops as the general education pattern if you're talking about a transfer degree. So let's say I'm stopping in Las Vegas. Well, there's, a million places I can eat and sleep and get some lunch. So if you're talking about your humanities requirement, there's a lot of different classes you can take, right? But maybe if I stop in this little, town in Utah, there's only one gas station, right? And I have to go to that one. So that might be your English 1A, right? Every student has to take English 1A. So sometimes there's options in what you're doing and sometimes there's not, right? So let's say I want to take a scenic route and we decided we didn't go to New Orleans. I wish we had, but we didn't have that much time. But let's say I said, I'm going across the country. I really want to go to New Orleans. So I'm going to go there first and it's going to be longer. But I've clarified, I know, I've got a map. So even though it's going to take longer, I still know where I'm going, right? But I just wanted a detour. So let's say a student wants to take a bunch of dance classes, but they really are interested in, becoming a teacher, elementary teacher. So those are things that we need to allow them to do as long as it's clear to the students, right? So that's what we're trying to do here. And then, here's a longer route. So this is 68 hours. This is getting really long, right? But that's okay. That's what I want to do. So I'm gonna go to Chicago and then Washington D.C. and up to New York City and then over to Lewiston. What the heck? I'm traveling around the country, right? So it's taking me a lot longer, but I know it's clear and I've made a decision. But also, whoops, wrong way. But also, what if I get to Chicago and then I decide, you know what? I don't really want to go to New York. Right? I want to go to Portland. This is where, so let's say you're along your path and a student, so now I've really added some time on, but a student has taken their classes, they've, been exploring a little bit and discovered, being a teacher is not really my thing. I really want to, be an artist. So they change their mind and it's a different path they have to take, right? So we want to allow that flexibility as long as we're clear to the students. Most of our students, and I think for us as instructors, because a lot of us, we're very passionate about going to school and we love taking classes. And we hope that our students gain that while they're here. But the majority of our students really are trying to achieve their goals And a lot of what we do when we think we're giving them exploration is really providing barriers for them. There's a great book. What is it called? The one with the cafeteria model. Michael and Ray, help me out. The community college.
Redesigning community colleges.
Redesigning community colleges. So in that book, they talk about the cafeteria style model, where for most colleges, if you're going to a four-year college, it's already mapped out for you. If you go to an Ivy League college, they don't have a lot of choices. There's a very strict curriculum. They know what they're taking when they get here. And so we think we're providing a lot of opportunity for our students, but then what ends up happening is they just don't know that it's like they walk in and there's all of these courses and they don't know what they're supposed to take, right? They have no idea. They have some idea of what their career goals are, but it's just very unclear. So what Guided Pathways is doing ultimately is trying to help clarify that for them. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Ray so he can talk about equity.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you so much. So before we start off with some equity-minded and culturally affirming practices for you to consider to start the semester off, I wanted to revisit equity-mindedness, the principles or notions of equity-mindedness that was discussed so long ago. I think it was July 8th during the kickoff new faculty, new employee equity training. Next slide, please. Great. So as always, what I want to start off by saying is this information that I'm sharing, it's not exhaustive. My slides are running away from me. It's not exhaustive, and these are but some of the things that you could consider when you start your semester off to create a meaningful experience for your students. And of course, I'd be remiss if we didn't start with equity-mindedness. This is something we have worked very hard on at the college to really incorporate into the structure and the culture really of the college. And what I want to say is that it hasn't always been that way. When I first started as a faculty coordinator in July 20th, 2015, we did not accomplish this, increasing environment and culture of equity-mindedness at the college overnight. It took a few years to really garner attention and the right people to rally behind equity work. And that was primarily accomplished in partnership and collaboration with our faculty and our classified professionals. And I really want to emphasize that point, that's really what has helped us get to where we're at. And so this is why it's so important to share this information with everyone, of course. So a review of equity-mindedness, right? According to Ben Simone and colleagues, we know that it requires us to be race conscious. And being race conscious in an affirmative and positive manner, right? As opposed to being perhaps colorblind, race evading, or race neutral, right? What we see is in both rhetoric and in policy and in practice is that color blindedness or race neutralness or race evading discourse, practice, policy, etc. What happens is that actually reproduces, right, or contributes to racial inequities. So therefore, we have to be race conscious in a positive way to be able to see the nuances of the barriers that are created in society, right? And so that also requires us to be institutionally focused as community college faculty, administrators, and classified professionals. And essentially what that means is that us as faculty and as administrators, and again, I consider myself a recovering faculty, although I still teach part-time at the college and one course at Fresno State, so I still have that identity. This requires us to focus on what we can do and the things we can influence, or those items that we have agency over, instead of focusing on the things that we really cannot fix, right? The background factors, the preconditions that students have and bring to the college. Instead of focusing on their educational experience in K-12, we focus on what it is that we as an individual can do in the college or department to transform the experience and outcomes of students, and especially minoritized students. And systemically aware, right? Being race conscious and institutionally focused, it really requires for us to be systemically aware, because to be race conscious and institutionally focused, you have a high level of awareness that the system that we are working in right now as a community college is the byproduct of the California Higher Education Master Plan, right? And not to really get into the history of that, if anyone knows about the Higher Education Master Plan for higher education, it was created by essentially 5 people, right? 3 of which were from the UC system. And it's no surprise why we see such an emphasis on the University of California system in California, right? They receive the highest levels of funding from all sectors of state and federal provisions, right? However, they enroll some of the top tier echelon students from the highest levels of societal backgrounds in the state and nation and world, right? And so being systemically aware not only would allow someone to acknowledge that, right, but you're also equity advancing, right? What are you doing with that awareness? You are advancing equity in your personal, professional, academic space, as well as in the larger campus culture. And what I mean by that is you're gonna participate probably in college committees or academic senate and what have you. And hopefully you pick something that is near and dear to your heart and maybe something that you're passionate about. It might make your experience in a new committee a little more engaging and meaningful. But when it is appropriate and when it is the right time in those spaces, you're using your voice, right, to advance equity for students. And that's essentially what that means there. Next slide, please. So just with a brief background of, hey, it's running away. If we can go back one slide. Oh, go up, I'm sorry, that's good. So with that concept of equity-mindedness in the background, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's referred to as the 5 equity-minded teaching practices for teaching online. Some of you might have seen the webinar facilitated by Drs. Frank Harris and Dr. Luke Wood. So obviously I need to give credit where credit is owed. Full disclosure, those are 2 individuals that are very near and dear to really my heart and my academic and professional identity. I consider them mentors, and they've been very influential in my work and my experience in higher education. So this is credited to them. And again, this is not exhaustive, but things that they recommend based on the existing body of work and online teaching environments. So being intrusive is what they recommend, being relational, being culturally relevant and affirming, being community focused, and being race conscious. So of course, these items that are recommended by Harris and Wood for online teaching practices are informed by Estella Ben-Simone's concept of equity-mindedness. And Dr. Frank Harris actually, I think, was one of the first faculty at USC who helped Estella Ben-Simone co-found the Center for Urban Education. So there's a very strong relationship between the 2 there. Next slide. So if you did see the webinar, this will not be new to you, but perhaps I can just invite you to maybe engage in some Q&A or dialogue at the end. If there's time, I hope there is time. I'm going to try to go through these slides as quick as possible to open up for questions and dialogue instead of just talking to you again the entire time. So being intrusive, what I want to say about this is I'm reminded of a conversation I had with Dr. Harris and Dr. Wood not too long ago about the difference of being intrusive and being invading, right? So they're not saying to be invading, right? And to be so intrusive to the point that the student might not be responsive to your responses and your action, right? And why is this important? We know that this is especially important for students from minoritized background, and especially Latino, Southeast Asian, Black, and Indigenous men. There's a large body of work on these men in community colleges. And what we do know based on the literature is that help-seeking behavior is not as prevalent for these men compared to all students in general, and even their female counterparts within each group. So if you're too intrusive or invading, right, it can actually serve as something that's counterproductive. And so this is, for example, where it's important to have that race-conscious lens in a positive manner, right? And this might be difficult, especially if students are not sharing their identities, the intersectionality of their identities, or they're not using their video cameras, right? We're gonna have to get creative and be imaginative in how we might facilitate that experience while we're online. So that's something for us to think about. But really, being intrusive is about being proactive, right? And so what they recommend is that you essentially do not wait for the students to reach out to you, but try to induce or try to promote engagement, right? Try to promote help-seeking behavior that is going to lead to interactions with you and the student. The more positive the interaction is between a faculty member and a student, the more likely those students are to engage in subsequent courses and assignments and activities. And we know that all of those experiences are positive influential factors in the experience and successful outcome of students, especially minoritized students. There's a large body of work that supports what I just said. I myself have done some research on this topic and speak to it, but I'm known in this larger body of work, right? And I just want to acknowledge that there do exist a body of scholarly work that supports this. So it's very important to try to be intrusive, and when being intrusive, to do so in an authentic way, right? So it's one thing to learn about some online teaching principles, right? Read them, you understand them, and then you try to employ them or put them to practice, right? For lack of anything, really, it can't be robotic, but it has to be intrusive in an authentic manner, right? A lot of students can read through the, well, you know what, and they know when we're not being authentic, and that's the bottom line. So if we can approach being intrusive to students from an authentically caring perspective, right? So me as the instructor, reaching out to, who's the first person I see? Keith Ford. That's the first person on my window. I'm reaching out to Keith as a student, and I'm saying, you know, hey Keith, I noticed I haven't seen you raise your hand or ask questions during the last 2 class sessions, and I really enjoyed your contributions to the classes 3 sessions ago, and I just wanted to know if everything is okay, if there's something I can do to perhaps encourage your engagement again at the next class meeting. I'm spitballing here, but I think you get the general sense of what I'm trying to say about being intrusive from a place of authenticity, right? So of course you got to read the information here, and like a good teacher, I'm trying not to read everything verbatim, but one thing I do want to emphasize is the bottom, so the first bullet point, and you see the last, what is that, the last line, first bullet point and last item, any other concerns or information you would like to share. So that's a very vague statement. And if you can think about the students, try to think about the student's perspective and when they're coming into your class, and trying to flip really the script. And instead of waiting for the students to ask questions about things they don't know, perhaps you can provide that information up front, right? That might be through the syllabus, that might be through resources on Canvas, and certainly that might be in a video, right? Some of you might be thinking of creating a video and just creating a statement where you're putting yourself out there for students to please seek your guidance and help for anything that they need help with, right? And it may not be related to the course, because if they need help in another class where perhaps, let's say that colleague isn't approaching their class from the same perspective and position that we're talking about here, you might be the one person who is going to play a large positive influence in that student being successful in another course, right? As an example. Next slide. So making success transparent in the course is very important. Come out from the beginning and try to demystify what it means to be successful in the course, right? And so you have your expectations, you lay that out in your syllabus, and you explain that in class, perhaps in the first meeting, and you make sure that that's resonant throughout the semester and the term, right? But being transparent in a proactive way, right? And so not just saying what your expectations are, but sharing all those wonderful resources that we went over, I believe it was yesterday with the scavenger hunt, right? So you have these high expectations, and you're coupling the high expectations with, we also have these resources and all of these wonderful tools on campus to help you be successful. And so essentially that's what this is saying here about being transparent in a proactive way. And really, again, thinking about this from the student perspective and trying to answer those questions that students may not know about earlier on in the course. We know this is especially important in the first 3 weeks of instruction. Why is this important in the first 3 weeks of instruction? Rhetorical question, that's right. So we lose, I even hate using the word, we lose a lot of students for one reason or another by the 3rd week of instruction, and especially at the 4th, right? So the more that we can do to increase the student's sense of belongingness, validation, worthwhileness, right, and mattering in those first 3 weeks, right, the more likely those experiences are going to contribute to the students staying around longer, right? That's the idea here. Next slide. Being relational, this is also referred to as appropriate disclosure. In the literature, being relational, it really requires us to do so in an appropriate way, right? We're not saying, hey, I know Carrie did this, so no shame, Carrie. We're not saying give out your cell phone and tell your students text you any time of the day and share personal things that are private. No, appropriate disclosure means that you're sharing things about your lived experience that correspond with your intersecting identities and really how you approach teaching, right? And you might be thinking, what? I can share that? You can share what you want in your classroom. That is your space. It is your academic domain and freedom to do so. And really, the more you can share about your experience and who you are, the more likely students will gravitate to you as an individual and not just a professor, right? That is an important identity, right? But they're gravitating to you as another human, and that is equally important, right? What we know based on the literature as well, this is especially important for minoritized students and even more so for men, right? And so being relational is really a necessary precondition for engagement between faculty and students, right? It kind of makes sense if you think about it, right? In any general context, right? If there, without a relationship between one or two individuals or more, right? It is difficult to foster engagement thereafter, right? And so being relational in an authentic way, right? And probably thinking about ways to humanize your course, especially in this environment of uncertainty and COVID-19, which is disproportionately impacting communities of color and in general, affecting everyone in a negative way right now. So just humanizing your course, your content, your interactions, and being relational is extremely important. Next slide. Next slide, I kind of covered all that. Great. So being culturally relevant and affirming, right? Some of you might be familiar with CRT, not to be confused with critical race theory, but CRT, culturally relevant teaching, right? This is something that is very much so common in academic spaces in K-12, right? And in recent years, it's become more prevalent and garnered more attention of academics and higher education, right? So it's definitely applied to what we do in community college, not being far removed from K-12, but also being part of higher education. So being culturally relevant and the items listed here is really based on a lot of the work that Wood, Harris, and other colleagues have done. So these items, self-efficacy, interest, intrinsic interest, sense of belonging, and perceptions of degree utility. Let me unpack those a little bit. So self-efficacy refers to students' belief in their own ability to be successful in college and navigate the campus. Intrinsic interest refers to the students' intellectual curiosity, essentially, about what to do with education. Sense of belonging, if you're not familiar with this, this phrase here or this construct, we all want to belong in society, to something, to someone, to some space, right? And I hope you all agree with me that we want every one of our students to feel like they belong in every space of our campus. And in a nutshell, those sentiments is what sense of belonging leads to, right? Perceptions of degree utility, that refers to students' worthwhileness. In other words, do students think that what they are doing in college, if their educational goal is to be a teacher, if they think that what they're doing currently is going to help them reach that goal, right? And then this bottom one here, healthy concepts of gender and masculinity. Gender as a binary construct is not conducive to the intersection intersectionality of identities of people who do not identify with being male or female, for example, right? And in some cultures, for example, in the Southeast Asian culture and in the Latinx culture, masculinity is essentially not a construct. It permeates the cultural fabric of Latin America, the United States, and beyond, Southeast Asia as well, right? And so the reason why I'm touching on these items here is because if you approach your class and your teaching and interactions from, we'll call it a culturally neutral perspective, then you're not acknowledging the nuanced and sometimes the complex identities, backgrounds, and experiences that students have from various backgrounds, right? Does that make sense? So culturally relevant and affirming teaching practices could include, next slide. Great. So this is also relevant to the Equity-Minded syllabus protocol. I know you just scratched the surface and you got your feet wet with some work you did with Marianne Valentino, and there's a lot more work to do in that area, but culturally relevant teaching practices is, in a nutshell, finding ways to ensure that your teaching material, content, discussions, activities, assignments, etc., are reflective and inclusive of your classroom, right? And you might be thinking, how could you do that if you don't know what the demographic makeup of your class is early on, right? That's a valid question. You may not know, but what we do know is that 56.5% of our student enrollment identify as Latinx, right? What we do know is that 6.5, we'll say, percent of our, these are approximates, right, of our student enrollment are Black or African American, right? And those are just two examples I'm going to give, right? So we can provide the demographic makeup of the college, and you have access to those information. So we have a general idea of who we serve, is what I'm saying, right? And so the more you can be intentional about incorporating culturally relevant content, materials, assignments, and activities into your course and your classroom, the more likely the students will see themselves in that work. And based on the literature and research, the more likely the students are going to want to engage in that work and in those activities. Next slide. So being community focused, this is something that was new to me, and I'm embracing this, and I'm eager to learn more. But what this essentially refers to is rather than focusing on the student, which we need to do, right? Focusing on the community as a group, right? And so, for example, creating norms and creating shared understandings about how the class is going to operate in a virtual environment can lead to a sense of togetherness, can lead to a sense of community. So for example, one thing that I include in my syllabus with my high expectations that I give and disclosure, when I did the Equity-Minded syllabus review with Marianne Valentino, she will tell you, me as the equity guy, or president would refer me to previously, me as the equity guy, I must tell you, I had the least equity-minded syllabus. My research, my professional work, my college experience currently has all been on equity. Yet my syllabus, I was yelling at students, bold, all caps, italicized, font 20, you will not, do not, the professor will. Who am I to profess myself? I can't just say I, right? And so since that illuminating experience, I made it more inviting and equity-minded. And I also had this epiphany of I need to create a sense of community. And so what I do in my syllabus, my high expectations that I list now, I also couple it with we share, we meaning the students in partnership and collaboration with me, we share the responsibility for the learning experience and outcome of this course. So in other words, what I'm saying is I have a high expectation of you. What you put into the course assignments and discussions is going to equally benefit or not your peer counterparts, right? And so it creates this sense of shared responsibility, and it also creates a sense of community. And I think now perhaps more than ever, we have to find ways to create an inviting and safe community space in a new environment, which is virtual, right? Next slide. looking at my time, be mindful of time. I have a few minutes. This speaks to or is akin to shared responsibility, but sharing perspectives, right? So that's acknowledging that each student, regardless of the content and course, they bring so much community cultural wealth. They bring so much knowledge, their rich experiences from their background and their academic alike can contribute to the learning space. And so creating spaces where they can share those perspectives, contribute to the content of the course, can lead to that sense of community. Next slide. And the last one here, I believe this is the last one. I don't want to belabor race consciousness. I've talked about that previously. But what I do want to say about this is to be race conscious requires us to do it in a positive and affirming manner, okay? Positive and affirming. I had a colleague years ago, a great colleague of mine, who I was having a conversation with about being race conscious, and the colleague was having a hard time understanding this concept. And the colleague compared being race conscious to to the atrocities of what the Nazis did, right? And the colleague was saying, well, they were race conscious, and I was saying, no. That's not what this suggests, right? And I'm sharing this because this colleague had a very hard time understanding this concept. And so I want to emphasize that when I say be race conscious, I mean in a positive and affirming manner, and seeing our students, right? Acknowledging who they are and really doing so in an affirming manner. And so with that, I think there's about a minute left. If there are any questions or comments, I'd love to take those. If there's time, Susie, I think there's about a minute.
So actually, Ray, you're way ahead of time.
Yeah.
Really?
So you want to do some, sorry. Okay. Do we want to do some questions for Ray or for me on anything that has been presented in the last hour?
I know it's a ton of information, and perhaps like drinking water from a very large water hose. so please, if there are any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them and take them.
Lots of positive comments. I'm trying to see if there's questions.
Let me go to the comments. And colleagues, just if there's something you want to talk about, or perhaps you have a question, and you want to talk like offline or anytime, if you just want to chat, I'm down. I love talking. I love being with people and colleagues. So feel free to look me up, shoot me a message, and I'd love to connect. Even if you don't want to ask now or talk now, that's what I'm here for. Were there any questions in the chat box?
Just a lot of comments, a lot of positive comments, and people reinforcing movement. Susie, did you?
I'm sorry, I was coughing. Sorry, I was clearing my throat.
This is
we're having a little side conversation kind of over here, or at least I am in the chat regarding just like those first impressions that you give, and I just remember. Oh my gosh, don't smile till Christmas. Yeah, don't smile till after census, right? Just when I first started teaching, just this idea that, I'm such a soft person. If they ask me for an extension or turn something in late, I always say yes. I can never say no. But I always wanted to, to create this impression of I'm super fair and no student is going to take advantage of me. To try to come in the first couple weeks of just, dressing more professionally. So I don't bust out my flip-flops until like the second month, that kind of stuff. But also, just being, this is the way it is. And then that way, like the thinking is, it's kind of like classroom management, and I have a single subject teaching credential. So I learned all about, how to control children and students and how to, set up these expectations. And so this whole idea is really turning that on its head, but it just feels so liberating to me because, this is how I really am. This is how I really want to say it. And I think just explaining the reasons why I have to have these certain policies, you know, that goes along with my teaching style 100%. You know, I just blame the college, you know, that when you know, this is what the state needs us to do. This is what the college needs us to do. And, you know, my classroom, we're in this together to try to beat, you know, what are these state, you know, regulations or mandates are. That's kind of my, how I'm coming, my thinking has changed in that way. And I'm really grateful for that.
Thank you, Sally. That's very thought-provoking and a very thoughtful comment. And, you know, I appreciate it because I think about, you know, I think I might have shared this in one of our discussions. I've been facilitating a lot of calls lately, so forgive me if I'm repeating this, but how do we teach? We teach in many cases the way we were taught, right? And that's not exhaustive, right? It influences the way we teach, right? The way we were taught, the way we learned. And the most recent experience we have is our graduate experience, right? So graduate school compared to community college, a community college that is open access, and community colleges serve as the primary pathway to post-secondary education for some of our nation's most marginalized communities, right? And so therefore those communities aren't going to start automatically at a university or a research one institution and go straight to a graduate program, right? And so we have to kind of unpack our learning experience to really try to understand the experience of our community college students. And part of that, Sally, is it's the demystifying piece, right? Is unpacking our expectations and unpacking what we expect, right? Yeah, I got high expectations, super high, and I couple them now. In fact, they're very authoritative. They were, right? Very authoritative. I can show you my old syllabus from a few years ago. But now what I do is I change that language and I've unpacked it, I demystified it, I did all that, but I couple it, right? I couple it with why I have those high expectations, right? So absolutely, Sally. And since we do have time, I guess I don't know my math well. I thought I was keeping good time, trying to finish on time. So we have a few minutes if there's any questions or comments. If not, thank you so much.
I'm wondering if you could speak just a little bit more to, there's something you touched on, and it was a personal epiphany for me in our conversations, you know, almost 3 years ago now. When you were talking about the students who are coming to us and being student ready. So I've told the story a million times, but I said to you at one point, you know, there's nothing I can do about the socioeconomic, the racial justice. I was very aware of, you know, racial justice issues and was very passionate about it. But I said, you know, look, I'm teaching them, why aren't we doing this when they're in kindergarten? That's where we should be throwing all the money, right? Let's change society so they're more prepared when they get here. So that was my mindset. And can you share a little bit about why that's not really how we should be thinking about it?
Right. So it's the whole idea of blaming the students, right, for their experience and outcome at the college, right, their background. It's very easy to point to all the things that Carrie said, but if we focus on the things we cannot control, right, their socioeconomic status, their personal and academic background, what high school or K-12 district they attended, if we focus on those things, it doesn't allow us to realize the opportunity to increase student success and equity. Because if we focus on that, we don't focus on the things we can actually control, right? And also, in some regards, it blames the students, right? In many cases, the students that come to our college have been blamed for things that are beyond their doing, beyond their control, many of which are the product of their communities. And some of these communities in Fresno, for example, in the historical red line areas of Fresno, in West Fresno in particular, if you think about land ownership and who owns property in those very communities today, there's few people who are living in those houses that actually own the property. Therefore, the majority are renting, right? And so not much has changed is what I'm saying. It's not an exhaustive history, but we have to understand where our students come from. We have to think about our DACA students, right? We have to think about our students from marginalized and minoritized communities. And we have to understand that their experience has not afforded them all of the opportunities that would allow them to be the students that we wish we had. And that's what I wanted to close with on Carrie's comment, right? We can't dwell on the type of students we wish we had. Instead, we have to be student ready, and we have to try to meet them where they're at, because that's one of the best ways to foster their success, right? This notion of students being ready for us, and that's an egalitarian thing across the board, and it's just going to work. It's going to reproduce inequities, right? And this is why I love the faculty. I love students, and faculty have the most interactions. Who do students spend the most time with? Faculty, right? I'm kind of giving way to my closing remark for the call to action piece. Dang it, that'll be later on. But I hope I addressed that, Carrie. Instead of the student focusing on the students being ready for the college, we have to focus on us being ready for the students, right?
Yeah, and I also saw it as what can I do to if we're thinking about changing, if the goal is to change our region and provide opportunities, and I'm a community college teacher, one of the things I can do is help empower my students so they can make those changes.
Mm-hmm.
A really idealistic view, I do, in terms of what we can help our students achieve in our society, what they can do to change their lives and the lives of everybody in the Central Valley.
Absolutely. That's spot on. And remember too, and forgive me if I'm repeating this, gosh, we've been presenting a lot, Carrie. Just a brief history of higher education, right? The first university in the nation, Harvard, right? Second to that, formally, right? The College of William and Mary, right? And then fast forward to where we're at now. Higher education from its inception was not designed to serve community college students, right? The birth of the community college system, and before that, the junior college system, was really predicated on very pivotal historical moments in an American society, starting with World War I, World War II, and then shortly after that, the Civil Rights Movement. It started to evolve into focusing more on diversity, right? And so what I'm saying in a nutshell is the community college system in the United States and in California, and we're California's first community college, right? We're the first in the state and second in the nation, I believe, right? Someone correct me. Okay, second in the nation. I love our college history. I love who we are, but we also have to acknowledge how this institution from the beginning was not created specifically for Black and African American, Latinx, Southeast Asian people, right? And so what we're trying to do now is we're trying to create a system that does work for those students, and it takes time. And I think one of the best ways to do so is through the faculty. And so I have a lot of hope in that.
Thank you so much, Ray. All right, now we're coming up on Susie's time. Susie, are you ready to take over from here?
I certainly am.
So Susie's going to talk to y'all about equity and professional development. And do you need to share, Susie?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
So yes, so a lot of the equity professional development that is will be discussed within your faculty support group cohorts at the end of this, but we've mentioned them as we've gone through this academy, the Cora trainings, teaching men of color, supporting men of color, microaggressions, and implicit bias. Really, really important. There's also the Eiffel Labs, which Ray has told me that they're not getting a cohort together for this fall because spring's cohort was interrupted. But in the spring, they'll be picking new participants for that, so be on the lookout for an email from Ray and myself. But before we go any further, when I was setting up this meeting this morning and doing the breakout rooms to assign you to put you in for your cohorts later on, I noticed there's a few of you who still haven't taken advantage of the free professional Zoom account available to all California community college employees through Confer Zoom. So please go to conferzoom.org. It gives you some benefits. Your meetings meeting times are unlimited, recordings, and you can host up to 300 people in a meeting. Although why anybody would want to do that, the more I do Zoom, the less attractive that option becomes to me. But yes, please do so because it's something that the entire college is going to use, the entire community college, California community colleges. So please take advantage of the Confer Zoom. You're all familiar with the Padlet that we've created for the Academy and broken it down. We've got the upcoming professional development. I want to remind you, if you haven't already done so, please sign up for Flex. You can also sign up for Convocation in there, and I'm going to talk about the differences between those in just a minute. Again, every single session that we've done throughout the Academy has been broken up. So Sally talked yesterday about preparing students for online learning, put that document in there. The presentations, they all get sent to me. I make sure that they're accessible and I upload them on here. We're recording all the sessions. So you can go back and rewatch the recording. We've created a professional YouTube channel, for professional development, and we'll be putting recordings up on there. Your faculty support guides within here are going to be able to post document. And then some of just the college resources that we've talked about throughout the Academy, the RAM Pathways. Fresno City College has its own YouTube channel. The information that Carol Raines-Heisdorf was presenting yesterday on who our students are and what they have to say can be found on the Institutional Research and Effectiveness website. Of course, the Student Equity and Success Program website on Fresno City College, and a link to the Student Equity Plan. And then some human resources. If anything you guys have been talking about, I've been putting up here. So Keith put in there on Monday or Tuesday. I have no idea which day that was. If you haven't received your contact yet, there's the person that you need to contact. Again, so now Flex, if you haven't signed up for Flex, please do so. So there's a difference between Convocation and Flex. Convocation is what we call opening day. Faculty have presumably been off all summer. I don't know. You guys haven't been off. Carrie hasn't been off. Marianne, Sally, Jackie, they haven't been off. But so presumably faculty have been off all summer. So this is their first day back on contract, and that's Convocation, opening day. Convocation is not part of your Flex Day activities. Your Flex obligation is that you will do 5 hours each semester dedicated to professional development, and that is considered, you cannot do it while you're on a duty day or while you're on contract. It has to be outside of that. Do I have that right, Carrie?
Sorry,
Flex.
Monitoring chat.
Flex.
Yes, you're right.
Flex has to be done during non-duty, right?
Correct.
Yes. But Convocation is mandatory. Attendance is taken. Actually, this year I'm really excited because through Zoom we'll have participant reports that we can pull, and that's going to become a much easier logistics for me. I just send that out to the deans, and if you don't show up for Convocation, then I believe an absence slip is written for you. But Flex Day, you can do. The college puts together Flex Days for you. These are peer-to-peer usually. We started planning for this one, I think, in February, and then COVID derailed us. But a call goes out for proposals. This is something you guys can do. This is a way for you to share your professional development, your skills, your expertise with your colleagues and with the campus at large. We send out a request for proposals. It goes out. You're given a deadline. all those proposed, and there's guidelines within there. We ask you to place it within a strand usually, and that's just a way for us so we could group, make sure that we're hitting all of the right, how do I want to put this? So in the past, Flex used to be what I did on my sabbatical. And as we got Ray on board, and as we got Guided Pathways on board, and as we started moving towards this more equity-minded campus, and I've been on it from the beginning, and I'm just so excited to see us finally moving in a direction. Ray and I had many conversations where we would talk about preaching to the choir, but it felt like the choir was, a handful of people. And to see that choir expand and grow has just been rewarding and gratifying and exciting. So all the proposals that are submitted have to have an equity lens. Again, this semester, it's a little bit tweaked because COVID hit. But you put those in, the committee takes those, we rank them, we score them, and then we select this schedule. So this program on Friday has been selected and vetted and chosen by your peers, but as well as we've brought in a few outside community.
Susie?
Yes.
Keith had his hand up, but I just wanted to see, do you mind if you're taking a question?
Oh, yes. No, questions all the way through. Yes, Keith.
Sorry, I have to unmute. Actually, it wasn't a question. It was just, I wanted to kind of underscore something that Susie said. If you host a Flex session, you get double the Flex time credit. So if you host 2 sessions, that's your Flex time for the semester.
Yes, and actually it's a little bit more than that. We went to Academic Senate with that, and I think it's 2.5.
Oh, really? Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, you'd still need to do 2, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. So yeah. If you're presenting a Flex session, then yes, you do get more credit because they take into account your preparation time. And if you present twice, you get even more time. And 5 hours Flex obligation per semester, 2 Flex days a year is nothing. I think we're one of the lowest Flex obligation. We have the lowest Flex obligation, one of them in the state of California. There's some colleges that do 8 days. I'd like to see us move towards that. But that's a contract issue. So if you'd like to see more professional development on Fresno City College, you know who to talk to. Talk to Keith. So we're very excited for Flex Day. I'm also nervous. I've been multitasking like a crazy person. I told Carrie this morning I had a panic attack. And I just had to remind myself to breathe. But please make sure you go and check it out. Please, we're asking you have to register. Normally you don't have to register for Flex. You do need to let your dean, some of you, it depends on your dean. You do need to let them know what sessions that you're going to attend. Not all deans require that. But this year you have to register because that's the only easy way I can think of that I can get the meeting links to everybody. Otherwise, I'm going to be working 24 hours a day for the next 3 days. So please register for Flex Day. There's also Flexible Flex, which you can do. And this, while the Equity Academy does not count towards Flexible Flex, Ray, do the Quora trainings?
I'm muted. I don't think they do.
I think they can if you're doing it not during duty time. So
Okay.
if you're doing the Quora trainings on the weekend, that can count for your Flexible Flex.
That's great.
I don't know that it does. I mean, it depends on if you're getting any kind of CEUs for it or
no, you cannot
or any
be
kind of pay.
Right, that's right. So if you're getting paid or CEUs, Keith's right. So
yeah. I mean, I would love for it to count for Flex, right? But
if you're just doing it on your own time and not getting paid, it can count.
But Flexible Flex, and again, I'm going to defer to faculty. I am not faculty. I'm a classified professional. But Flexible Flex needs to be approved in advance by your dean, correct?
Correct. But I think you could say, and I think all the deans would be supportive of this, if you wanted to say that you're going to do equity trainings, that would be fine. And then as you do them before the obligations, you have to do them throughout the semester at some point on non-duty time. That I'm sure any dean, I know ours in humanities would be supportive of that. But I don't know that you need to be too specific in advance. If you know that you're going to want to do some trainings that Ray has and Susie have provided, and you can tell them I said it, and then they can come yell at me. They won't, but I have good relationships with all the deans, so feel free to tell them I told you could do that.
But the point is, you can't do something, like you couldn't have done something on July 1st and then went, oh, you know what, this would have been really good as flex, and then gone to your dean and said, hey, I did this, can I use it for flexible flex? Right? You can't do something like that.
Susie, can I point out one more thing on this one? Because I had confusion, and it's because I was doing flexible flex. You have to sign up for convocation no matter what. So you have to go in and sign up for this, even though it says flex on the invitation.
No, thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. No. So convocation will be sent out in a separate email to you. They'll send out the webinar ID link and ID and instructions on when to log on. The only reason we include convocation in the Flex Day website is, number one, President Goldsmith really likes how the Flex website looks, and she thinks it's slick and cool, and so she wants it included, and I agree. I have some pretty amazing software at my fingertips, and it just makes me look really, really, really good. But no, you do not have to sign up for Flex through this. But if you're going to sign up for Flex Day, why not sign up for convocation at the same time? And it's really just a way to give me an idea of how many numbers to expect. We had to schedule this through a webinar through the State Chancellor's Office. And depending on how many people are going to be attending, that increases the size of the webinar that we need and increases the cost. So yes, you do not have to register for convocation through this website. But if you're going there to register for Flex, why not do so?
Thanks for the clarification. You might want to, we should probably let the deans know, because they told us we had to.
Okay, I will. You can, I always try to plan for every single possible contingency and outcome, and then somebody always throws me a question. Also, if you're an adjunct, and you guys are not, but if you know adjuncts that you're working with, and I did inform the deans of all this, the college pays for adjuncts to attend Flex. Up to this, so they get paid up to 5 hours at the contract rate of $25 an hour to attend Flex. So if you have any adjunct colleagues, and I'm going to be sending a reminder out this afternoon for people to register for Flex again, and I will include that information. But it's always nice if it comes from a peer. Any questions about Flex or convocation that I haven't addressed? Do you see any questions in the chat? Yes.
Well, I'm sorry, it's probably not the right time, but I got a question about Quora, and I wanted to address something if I could publicly. Or
absolutely. Okay. Go for it.
So I got a question about compensation for Quora, and so I wanted to be very outright and transparent with everyone. So those of you that, well, I guess that's everyone. Most people are first-time faculty to the college, so you might not be aware of this, but you know how we've been talking a lot about the Quora trainings. One of the things that me and the previous Student Equity and Success Committee co-chair, who is Carla Kirk, who is now the Academic Senate President, Carrie Ibarra, and a few other colleagues, this was a couple years ago when we were developing the current equity plan, we really advocated for compensation for all faculty for the Quora trainings. And I went to bat for this. And I even received a lot of pushback from certain administrators. That's neither here nor there. What the good thing is that we were able to accommodate compensation at $25 per hour for the trainings, up to 15 hours, right? Because each training is 15 hours. And previously last year, we budgeted for $15,000. That's just something we budgeted for, right? And doing our projections for our budget planning for Quora. Last year, we spent $55,000, I think, in stipends for Quora. That's great. Last year, I would have said, who cares if we went over that budget? We can do an expenditure transfer. We have enough. This is what we should be doing with the funds. we were able to do that. There hasn't been a budget cut to the equity funds yet, thank goodness. But we know that it's going to come in the next year, and even worse the year after that. And there could be some changes perhaps mid-fall, really to all the budgets, depending on what happens at the state level. So what we have earmarked right now or budgeted is $15,000. That's the line item for Cora stipend trainings. So if we did the math, I think that's about 15,000 divided by 350. If someone does a full training, I think that's like what, 45 people only that would be able to be compensated. So if someone did all 4 trainings, then that would only be about 10 to 12 people that could be compensated. So I'm working with my vice president and the budget technician we have to see what we can offer, because right now we probably aren't going to be able to offer a stipend for, if you completed all 4 trainings. Let's see, Sally's on my screen. If Sally completes all 4 trainings, we just can't afford to give Sally and every other person that does all 4 trainings this year compensation for that. So we're looking at that right now, but I want you to know this is where we're at, and I'm still advocating for some form of compensation for completing those trainings, especially because if you're doing it outside of your contract and your college hours. So just wanted to mention that. Stay on the lookout.
Thank you, Ray. So right now, Fresno City College, we do have a web page. Professional development does have a web page, and this is what it looks like right now. It's not good. It's not good at all. I've been working on this all summer long. In fact, I've been working on it since the very first week that COVID pulled us to home. And this is what it's going to look like, but I haven't had any time whatsoever. So it's a work in progress. But luckily, I may not have to even do that, because over the summer, one of the other things that I was doing, the Vision Resource Center, which is tied to the Chancellor's Office Vision for Success, and is, again, a free professional development platform. You can connect it within communities, provided to all California Community College employees, and it's free. There's 24/7 professional development from LinkedIn Learning, I think it's now called, formerly lynda.com, and Skillsoft. And finally, the district and all the colleges have become integrated with the Vision Resource Center and Cornerstone, which is an online learning platform. So over the summer, I attended an academy. You were my second academy. My first academy was getting Cornerstone up and running, and the district, thank goodness, has taken the lead on this and put the welcome page in. So when you log into the Vision for Success, and I believe this is also going to be available through our portal, our single sign-on, and I may go through that with you guys if you're unaware of how do you know what the portal is and how to use it? I've been reading the evaluations you guys have been sending for the academy, and thank you so much. We really, really depend on your feedback, because that's the only way we know what we're covering, what we don't need to cover, what you want us to cover. And I noticed that a couple of the comments mentioned that, here's some things that, what do we need to know? What do we need to know? And I think a portal is an important thing for a need to know. So I'll cover that briefly. Anyhow, sorry, I'm going off track. Guys, I am so crazy right now. I apologize. I'm normally not this scattered, but this is my busiest week, and I take all next week off. I'm one of the few people on the college campus that is allowed to take the first week off of school. Thank goodness. So yeah, so once it's integrated, all your professional development will be done in through here. Let me see, get to my, here we go. And Cornerstone is an amazing tool. Not only is it integrating with everything that's available on the Vision for Success, but also we can add external trainings. You can sign up to present professional development, a session through Cornerstone. So here is my transcript. This is the trainings that I've done. And this is a transcript that you take with you. We don't ever want you to leave Fresno City College. We don't even want you to go to one of the other colleges. We're thrilled that Michaela deserted Community College Clovis to come be with us. But we understand that's not necessarily what happens. There's changes in life. But if you remain in a community college in California, you can take your transcript with you wherever you go. So yeah, really cool. And again, this is something now that the Flex Day and Convocation and the Academy, my part in it is over and done with. This is what I'll be working on is making sure that all the professional development that's available is to here for you in one-stop shop. So you may or may not have received my emails. If you're not getting the mail-alls from the campus, please open a help desk ticket. And if somebody could put that in the chat, a link to how to get to a help desk ticket to be added to the mail list. That's a function of Colleague, and it's supposed to integrate and download every night, but some of you may not be getting the mail alls. But we've been doing the Black Minds Matter webinar facilitated discussion afterwards. Black Minds Matter is one of those outside professional development, equity professional developments that we take and we figure how is this going to work for Fresno City College. And it all started actually with the State Academic Senate and Guided Pathways. So last year, Carrie, I believe, was it? The State Academic Senate started doing webinars, Guided Pathways webinars, realizing that faculty didn't know enough about it. A lot of people didn't know enough about it. And so Carrie and I sat down and went, how about we watch these webinars and then we have a discussion afterwards about what that webinar means for us. So it kind of grew out of there. And when the Black Minds Matter facilitated webinar came up, Ray and Carrie and I said, why don't we do the same thing? So you'll probably see a lot of that in terms of professional development for the year. Professional development, eventually, as David said, there's a professional development center in the works, and I've been involved in the planning on that from the beginning. And I'm really, really, really excited to have an actual space where people can go and get professional developments, where I can hold events, where I don't have to go madly searching through the college for a place that isn't holding a class, for a room that's going to fit 50 people, that I will have my own space. It's not mine. I say it's the royal mine. It's all of ours. But completely lost my train of thought.
Professional Development Center.
Oh, Professional Development Center. Okay, professional development is small right now. And Carrie mentioned at the very beginning, you guys are coming on at an incredible time because we're starting to hit our equity stride. We're starting to hit our Guided Pathways stride. And we're starting to hit our professional development stride. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, my position didn't exist. Professional development was handled by a handful of people. We had the committee who puts together Flex Day, is also responsible for writing the professional development plan. And one of our main recommendations in that plan was having a professional development coordinator with their own staff and their own space. So pretty much I was responsible for creating for and applying for and getting my own job. So that kind of worked out very nicely for me. But while we're in COVID, everything's going to have to be online. So we're going to leverage those outside resources. And that's what I'm doing. That's a large part of my job, is to go out there and find the equity-focused, guided pathways, vision for success, pedagogy, just whatever I think that you need. And again, I'm classified professional. I don't know what you need. So I rely heavily on you telling me what you need. And I think that's it. I think I've run out of steam. I think my brain's hit its limit.
Thank you so much, Susie. So we had one question that was a private chat to me about how we keep track of flex hours. And I think eventually Cornerstone will do this, but I don't know how we're doing it this year. Susie, do you know?
Yes. So again, a silver lining. In the old days, there were sign-in sheets that you physically signed in on every room, and then those got turned into me, and then I forwarded those on to the deans who calculated if your flex obligation was met or not. But because everything's done through Zoom, again, it's just a participant report that we download, and we'll send it to the deans.
And if they're doing flexible flex, there'll be another form.
It's education. We're big on forms, and you get that from your dean.
Thank you. All right, so why don't we go ahead and take a break as 7 minutes. I hope that works for everybody. Come back to this room, and then Susie is going to direct you to your breakout sessions, so you can have some team time with your cohort and get your last minute. Please feel free to ask them any of your burning questions. Don't hold back, and it'll be a smaller forum, and then they'll have some more things to share with you. And then we'll come back here, and Ray is going to give you some final words of wisdom. So we'll see you in a bit.
And it looks like everybody's back, right?
Great, sounds good. All right.
Yeah, we got kind of cut off in the midst of a discussion.
Oh, sorry about that.
No worries.
Sorry, yeah, if that happened, and you'd like to continue it, just let me know. And
Okay.
I can put you back into your breakout room after Ray does his call to action. I know he's got some stuff he needs to do, so we wanted to wrap up his part of it.
All righty, shall we begin?
Yes.
Next slide. I really need to find a new phrase for next slide. Kind of getting tired of it. So first, welcome back everyone from your breakout sessions. If you were engaged or in the middle of a good conversation and you want to continue that, if you have time, it sounds like Susie will be online, I'll be online too, where you can go back out to your breakout rooms and discuss more if you like. We hope that you found this 3-day orientation helpful and meaningful. Full disclosure, this is our first time doing this. And so with that, certainly we are always willing to learn from you on how we can improve and make this better for the next time around. You have the surveys that we've been sending out, so please feel free to share your thoughts there. We welcome all comments and feedback just to improve the design and implementation of this the next time around. So that being said, we started back in July 8th, I believe, with the kickoff new employee and faculty orientation meeting with the call to action webinar that was hosted by the Chancellor's Office originally on June 3rd. And of course, we thought it would be fitting and suitable to close out this 3-day orientation with the call to action yet again. And if you haven't had a chance to see that webinar yet, please do find time to watch it. It's a thought-provoking and very thoughtful webinar on a conversation and dialogue about some of the things currently pressing and facing our society, which directly impact California community colleges. So if you didn't get to see the webinar, the call to action webinar was a powerful, painful, and purposeful discussion with an intentional focus on creating a space for dialogue, community, and action in response to the senseless killing of George Floyd, who is in a long line of African-American men slain by those in position of authority. So during that webinar, Deputy Chancellor Dr. Daisy Gonzalez, I think she really captured the sentiment of the webinar with something she said as follows: we need to figure out how we use our positions of privilege, influence, and power to make a difference in this moment. We cannot say we are equity champions and be afraid to have an open dialogue about structural racism. We cannot talk about equity without talking about inequality, and we cannot talk about inclusion without talking about oppression. Next slide. And although this is a very thought-provoking statement and plea for action to the California Community College system from the Chancellor's office. Those sentiments are not new to Fresno City College. This has been our focus over the past 5 years, and more increasingly over the past 2.5 to 3 years. That's really when we've seen the most traction in the movement in terms of trying to create a culture and ethos of equity-mindedness. And you all certainly know that California community colleges are open access institutions by design, right, according to the California Higher Education Master Plan. Therefore, California community colleges admit the top 100% of students who apply. We take them all, right? Unfortunately, what we know is that access alone is insufficient, and for many communities, it's an unfulfilled promise. We've worked very hard over the past few years to try to create and normalize this culture of equity-mindedness that you've heard a lot about, and we've done a lot. We've created a lot of inertia within the campus with the support of our faculty, our classified professionals, and administrator. But I want to point out that if you expect our administrators to save the college and maintain and sustain a culture of equity, it's not going to happen. It is primarily going to be the faculty and the classified professionals who are going to sustain a culture of equity-mindedness at the college. Next slide. So part of embedding equity requires us to sow the concept of equity-mindedness into the cultural fabric of the institution. And what I mean by cultural fabric specifically in this article, this piece that I recently co-authored with a good friend of mine, is what we propose is that the cultural fabric of higher education institutions in part includes the mission, the vision, right? Because those mission and vision statements and those priorities correspond with college education master plans and college strategic plans. Why are those important? Because academic senate, classified senate, administrators, and constituency groups in general must approve, and even before approving those documents, have to weigh in on the decision-making process of those documents, right? So that's why it's important to embed these concepts of equity-mindedness into the culture of the college. And we've done that somewhat at Fresno City College. We have more work to do, but it's a good starting point. We also maintain that it requires colleges to incorporate concepts of equity-mindedness into program review, hiring practices, and onboarding processes and procedures as well. And this is exactly where we're at as a college. We've incorporated some equity elements into our program review process. We have focused more on the onboarding process as a college, just because a lot of the hiring practices are nested within human resources. We have some control over the things that we do as a college, but that's a district-wide conversation. And this is what we've done. And what does that mean for us today as we're closing out with this call to action? Next slide. Well, if you haven't figured out by now, full disclosure, my bias when it comes to equity work in terms of sustainability rests in the faculty and the classified professionals. But really for this collective change to happen, as I've said several times, it has to start first with us, with me, with you, the individual, first before the collective change can happen and can fully be realized, right? And faculty have the opportunity to transform the culture of the college, to transform lives through education, especially for students who are experiencing the highest levels of disproportionate impact, which we know through campus-based research and data currently and historically, that includes our Black and African American, Latinx, Native American, and Southeast Asian students. As faculty, as instructors, you have some of the strongest and most influential power in the college. And that statement can be applied to essentially all of higher education. And so I really have a lot of confidence, and I have a lot of trust in our faculty to contribute to the culture that we are already creating, and that culture being one that normalizes equity-mindedness, so we can fully realize equity and outcomes for our most marginalized communities. And this really is not possible without faculty. And so I want to thank you all for being with us during this 3-day orientation. And I hope you will join us in this call to action. Speaking of joining us, next slide. Thank you, Michael, for reminding me about the follow-up to the Chancellor's Office Call to Action webinar. I suggest you watch the first webinar before watching this one if you haven't seen the first one, just because I imagine that that's going to inform and obviously be a prelude to this webinar. So watch that if you can. It should be in the Padlet somewhere online. This is scheduled for August 19th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. It's kind of a wonky time for teaching schedules. I get that. So if you're not able to join for the live session, I know that they will provide a link to the recording shortly after that. We're not providing instructions on how to register just because Susie and I were trying to register during the breakout sessions and we had a lot of trouble registering for the session. So we're going to try to figure that out before we get the instructions and information on how to register to the rest of the group. And with that, that brings us to our conclusion, right on time at 11:59. So again, thank you all for joining us, for being with us really since the kickoff. I want to say thank you also to the colleagues who helped put this together. This really, we have been flying by the seat of our pants, as the saying goes. And I want to emphasize again that we welcome all feedback and input. Please do so through the survey. We are looking to improve what we're doing here. And like anything that happens on a first-time basis, this is often the trial, right? So we do hope that you found this information resourceful, insightful. You certainly did not receive every single thing that you need to know as a new faculty at Fresno City College. And this is why we have paired you up with some wonderful colleagues, your faculty guides, to help you throughout the process. So if you have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to your guides. You can reach out to anyone that presented, really for anything you would like to discuss. And with that, I'll turn it over to Susie because I know some people wanted to still talk and maybe go to a breakout.
Absolutely. And I want to echo Ray's comments. Thank you so much for bearing with us. As he mentioned, this is our first time doing this, and especially doing it during COVID has just been crazy making for all of us. So we thank you for your patience. We welcome your honest and evaluation. We can only improve if you tell us what we need to improve. So for those of you who would like to, the faculty guys, you want to tell me if you want to go back into breakout rooms, just let me know and I'll stick you back.
Susie, before you do that, there's a question that came up from our group talking about these 15 hours that's required. That's for the semester or for the whole year? How does that work? Again, please.
Michael.
For the cohort.
Is Michael still here?
Yeah, that is for the semester.
For the semester.
Yeah. So
Okay.
15 hours per semester.
And how is that counted? Is that as a stipend or does that count towards their, so this might be a question for Keith too. Does this count towards the 5 hours, like for the committees and things like that? That's what it counts for. Right.
So the idea behind this, so I can give all of you a sort of brief background into how this happened. This was something that I know Ray and Keith had been working on as part of the Equity and Success Committee, and at the same time, it was something that was also being worked on in the Academic Senate, and so we had meetings with Vice President Lopez, and we were trying to sort of figure out how everyone could be compensated for this and how we could work this into the first year for the new faculty. And what we decided was that instead of your sort of 5 hours per week professional commitment outside of the classroom, which oftentimes is done through committee work, through different work groups and other types of activities, we thought that for all of you, one of the best ways to be spending that time would be doing a lot of this equity work with each other, with your faculty support guides, as a part of a year-long process in getting onboarded into the college. So obviously, as Keith mentioned, the the 15 hours, doesn't meet that 5 hour per week commitment. So, I mean, you will still be doing other things. And, I know many of you are excited to get into committees and academic senate in some cases, and doing some of the other fun things and exciting things that you can get involved with on campus. But this is just going to be sort of a part of that commitment. And it's, we'll have things as we go. There's, going to be the monthly meeting that you all be having with your faculty support guides, which will count towards that. And then also just various other activities and professional development opportunities.
Okay.
Any
Thank you
other
very much for
questions?
that.
Okay, who wants to go into a breakout room? Sally, were you guys done, or?
I think we're done. Yeah, we're emailing over here, so I think we are done. Yeah.
Okay, Juanita wants to. Jackie, how about you?
I think we're
Your
done.
group? Julio?
We're good.
Okay, I'm going to take Juanita's group and put you back into a breakout room. For the rest of you, again, thank you for joining us. See you tomorrow at Convocation, and I hope to see you at Flex Day. Thank you.